Yo, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. It's another day. 10:04 a.m. Pacific time. It's June 20th, 2026. US Qatar worked to give Iran access to billions of dollars in frozen cash. The US is working with Qatar on a plan to make billions of dollars in frozen funds available to Iran for humanitarian spending, another early financial incentive under the recently signed deal to end the war, with people familiar with the matter saying. The plan, which isn't yet completed, is aimed at giving Iran access to the spending power of some of its estimated $100 billion in cash frozen worldwide, beginning with $6 billion held in Qatar. Under the deal, Qatar will allow purchases of food, medicine, and other humanitarian goods ordered by Iran's central bank with money drawn from frozen Iranian assets, mainly cash from oil and other humanitarian goods ordered by Iran's central bank with money withdrawn from frozen Iranian assets, mainly cash from oil sales that has been locked up overseas by sanctions, the people said. The facility could provide a template for dealing with other pools of frozen Iranian cash around the world and a start on the first tranche of the $24 billion in blocked funds that Tehran wants released as soon as possible, some of the people said. Iran still needs to agree to the mechanism. It is one of many ideas Washington is expected to raise over the next 2 months of nuclear discussions with Tehran following a deal to pause the war and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the people said. Even limited assets releases function as both economic lifelines and political signals of de-escalation, said Sanam Vakil, Middle East director at Chatham House, a London think tank. They are one of the few concrete incentives Iran can secure with Washington to stabilize its currency and ease domestic economic pressure. The domestic economic pressure. Much can still go wrong, Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei said on X Thursday that President Trump agreed to pause hostilities out of desperation. This appeared to prompt Trump to hit back with his own social media post. "We didn't meet out of desperation, Iran did. They are finished. We'll play out the 60 days. They get no money, no 10 cents. Not 10 cents. Under the deal signed Wednesday by Trump, the U.S. is committed to making Iran's frozen assets fully available for use and negotiating a mechanism for doing so. A U.S. official said this week the funds will flow as long as Iran is engaging productively in talks. The arrangement with Qatar would be in addition to the billions of dollars Iran is expected to earn from oil sales, which Washington agreed to allow immediately upon signing the agreement on Wednesday. In both cases, the U.S. agreed to waive sanctions and issue authorizations as needed to facilitate the transactions. Critics of the deal say it gives Iran big payouts before requiring it to make concessions on its nuclear program. Vice President J.D. Vance and other defenders of the agreement say it will ease pressure on the global economy by opening the strategic waterway and head off further conflict while limiting Iran's financial benefits until it makes progress on U.S. demands. The arrangement under discussion with Qatar would give the U.S. more visibility over Iran's purchases and more leverage over Tehran's ability to keep using its frozen cash. "We have taken their money. It isn't our money. It's their money. And we froze it," Trump told reporters Wednesday at the Group of Seven meeting in France. "At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back. The money, which is largely from oil sales, is locked up by sanctions in countries like China, India, Iraq, and Qatar. In 2023, the Biden administration issued a sanctions waiver that allowed $6 billion in Iranian oil revenue to be transferred from South Korea, had brought which had bought the oil to Qatar as part of a deal for Iran to free 5 American citizens it was holding as prisoners. The funds were to be spent on humanitarian goods from Iran, but Biden froze them in Qatar after Iranian ally Hamas launched the October 7, 2023 attacks on southern Israel. The talks to arrange the release of the Qatar funds started in late May when Iran's parliament speaker and chief negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalib led a delegation to Doha to discuss arrangements. The people familiar with the matter said the discussions helped restore momentum in the talks toward the memorandum of understanding, the people said. Iran desperately needs access to foreign currency to purchase goods amid a spiraling economic crisis, rampant inflation, and collapsed local currency. While access to the frozen cash helps, analysts say repairing Iran's economy will require significant sanctions relief, which Trump and other top officials say would only come if Iran delivers on U.S. demands on its nuclear program. The U.S. is willing to be more flexible on access to Iran's frozen assets. A senior administration official said Wednesday that Iran would get access to the assets if it implements a memorandum of understanding and will get more for what he called good behaviors such as turning over enriched uranium. Moving on, Democrats eye new generation of leaders who could outrun Vance in 2028. J.D. Vance has emerged as an early frontrunner for the 2028 Republican presidential nomination, but a new poll indicates he may struggle in a potential general election campaign. Democrats are poised to win. In mid-June, the Public Sentiment Institute released the findings of its latest polling on the political situation in America, and it found that nearly every high-profile Democratic candidate already appearing in polls would defeat Vance in 2028. Vance seemed to be the heir apparent. Vance secured the support of 38.1% of voters who identified as Republicans for the 2028 Republican primary. The VP's closest competition was the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who had the support of 17.2% of GOP-leaning respondents. Kamala Harris could be nominated. Former Vice President Kamala Harris led the group of possible Democratic candidates who may run the party's 2028 primary with 29.2% support from Democratic identifying respondents. However, she wasn't the only candidate with big backing. Gavin Newsom may be the candidate. California Governor Gavin Newsom followed closely behind Harris in second with 15.2% support, while former Biden administration's Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was in third with 11.3% support, followed by another very interesting name. Another big name in contention, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pulled close on Buttigieg's heels in fourth place with 7.2% support, but the more interesting finding from the survey data was that Ocasio-Cortez, also referred as AOC, would soundly defeat Vance in 2028. Pitting 8 possible candidates against each other, the Public Sentiment Institute did something that no other poll has really begun doing ahead of the 2028 presidential election. It surveyed more than 1,000 American adults about a series of hypothetical matchups of likely presidential candidates, and Vance performed poorly in all cases. AOC versus Vance. In what may have been the most interesting matchup, AOC was put up against Vance, and the data showed that the New York Congresswoman would beat Vance by a huge 8.8 points, 48.4% to 39.6% if the two ended up on the ballot on election day. Newsom would also win against Vance. AOC wasn't the only possible Democratic presidential candidate who would easily win against Vance. Newsom performed even better than Ocasio-Cortez and would defeat the vice president by 11.9 points if the two faced off against one another in 2028. Looking at undecided voters, even when looking at the undecided vote, which was 12% in the Ocasio-Cortez-Vance matchup and 10.3% in the Newsom-Vance matchup, the vice president would not be able to eke out a win against Newsom. But he could if he netted the entire 12% against AOC. The battle of the vice presidents. The same trend played out with the top Democratic candidate in the polling. The former Vice President Harris would beat Vance in 2028 by 11.1 points, 49% or 49.4% to 38.3%, with 12.3% still undecided in the bout. So Vance would need all undecided voters to win. Could Buttigieg beat Vance? The Public Sentiment Institute did not pit Buttigieg against Vance, which is unfortunate because Buttigieg has emerged as a major favorite in key early presidential polls, such as a poll from Emerson College where the former Transportation Secretary was leading the field of possible Democratic candidates with 18% support. Newsom was close behind at 16%. Marco Rubio fared no better. The other potential heir to Trump's Republican Party in 2028, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, was also pitted against some of the top Democratic contenders, and while Rubio fared better than Vance, he still lost to the big three names, just like the vice president. Rubio would lose to AOC. Like Vance, AOC would beat Rubio by 8.8 points. However, surveyed respondents were a lot more undecided than with Vance. While 46.8% would pick Ocasio-Cortez and 38% would cast their ballot for Rubio, 15.2% said they were undecided. Newsom would defeat Rubio. Newsom would defeat the Secretary of State by 8.6 points in a hypothetical matchup, 47.9% to a 39.3%. However, 12.8% of the respondents were undecided in this bout. The strongest Democratic candidate among the big names so far who could defeat Rubio and who was also matched up against him in 2028 was the former vice president. Harris won the biggest victory. Harris would beat Rubio by 10.5 points, with 49.9% of respondents saying they would vote for her over the Secretary of State and 39.4% saying they would cast their vote for Rubio, but just 10.7% were undecided, making Harris the best candidate for the Dems at this time. Hunter Biden would also do well. Interestingly, Hunter Biden was a strong Democratic candidate when pitted against both Vance and Rubio. Biden would beat Vance by 4.3 points and defeat Rubio by 4.8 points. A key lesson from the polling, however, Biden has the support of 2.4% of the Democratic identifying respondents. The real story revealed in the data may not have been that certain Democratic candidates could win in 2028, but rather that any decently good candidate will do so among an electorate that is growing increasingly upset with Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Moving on, Pope Leo's popularity with Republican Catholics plummets after his bitter feuds with Trump. Pope Leo has seen his approval ratings among Republican Catholics take a hit following his feud with Donald Trump earlier this year. The Chicago-born pontiff and the president were at odds over the Iran war and other issues, as Trump at one point issued frequent blistering statements slamming Pope Leo. While the Pope remains broadly popular among Americans, the tiff has hurt him with Catholics on the right, according to a new Pew Research Center poll. While 72% of Republicans in the church approve of the Pope, the figure is down from 84% at this past August. It is a much steeper drop than Leo has faced among Democrat Catholics, among whom 84% approve, down from 89% in August of 2025. In the same survey, 39% of Republican Catholics said Pope Leo has been too critical of Trump, as opposed to 33% who say the president has criticized the pontiff too much. In a complete reversal, 70% of Democrats say Trump has been too negative about the Pope versus just 3% who say the opposite. Democrats, 51%, slightly outnumber Republicans, 45% among American Catholics who responded to the survey. Pope Leo's approval rating is at 78% when all American Catholics' views are factored in, with just 12% disapproving. Pope Leo has seen his approval ratings among Republican Catholics take a hit following his feud with Donald Trump earlier this year. The Chicago-born pontiff and the president were at odds over the Iranian war and other issues, as Trump at one point issued frequent blistering statements slamming Pope Leo. That number climbs up to 85% approving when asking Catholics who attend Mass at least once a week. The 78% approval rating is about the same as the predecessor Pope Francis in February 2025, the last survey taken before his death. The President and the Holy Father have since gone on to issuing withering statements about one another, albeit indirectly on the Pope's part regarding the war on Iran. The pontiff has also disagreed with Trump's regarding the Department of Justice reinstitution of the death penalty. In a long-winded Truth Social post in April, Trump berated Pope Leo for being weak on crime, and blasted the Chicago-born Pope for meeting with President Barack Obama's political advisor David Axelrod, a loser from the left. The feud simmered down after Pope Leo issued a clarifying message about his remarks and accused the media of sensationalizing the narrative. Trump told CBS News that he decided to unload on the American-born Pope after seeing a 60-minute segment that showcased the pontiff's disapproval of the Iran war and Trump's immigration agenda. He's wrong on the issues, Trump said. I don't think he should be getting into politics. I think he probably learned that from this. Trump gave a blunt no when asked if he had any plans to call Pope Leo, and said he had no idea if the pontiff would visit the United States while Trump is president. It's up to him, not up to me, Trump said. The president maintains much friendlier relations with Leo's MAGA supporting brother Louis. Louis proposed attending Trump's UFC Freedom 250 celebration on the White House lawn on Sunday. Pope Leo has said that he plans to continue speaking out against war, telling Reuters, "I don't want to get into a debate with him." Speaking aboard the papal flight to Algiers, where Leo is starting a 10-day tour to 4 African countries, he added, "I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. I will continue to speak out loud against war, looking to promote peace, promoting dialogue and multilateral relationships among the states to look for just solutions to problems. Too many people are suffering in the world today. Too many innocent people are being killed, and I think someone has to stand up and say there's a better way." Yo, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. Smash that like button. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Instagram, the Studio 11. Follow me on X, the Studio 2020. I like to say Twitter. Subscribe to the channel, and obviously, I'll see you on the next one.